This video will provide you with an overview of the basic reporting requirements for the 2017 Benchmark Survey of Transactions in Selected Services and Intellectual Property with Foreign Persons, Form BE-120. The focus of this video is to outline the purpose and reporting requirements of the BE-120 survey, including how to determine a respondent's reporting status and the reportable transactions, and provide a brief overview of how to report transactions on the mandatory schedules. The BE-120 benchmark survey is necessary to accurately measure cross-border trade in services and intellectual property in order to obtain timely data on the size and significance of these transactions between U.S. and foreign persons. The data are used in compiling the U.S. economic accounts, estimating the international transactions accounts, and in providing input into other U.S. economic measures and accounts, contributing particularly to the national income and product accounts and input-output accounts. The data are needed to monitor U.S. cross-border transactions in intellectual property and selected services, analyze the impact on the United States and foreign economies, support U.S. international trade policy, assess and promote U.S. competitiveness in international trade and services, and improve the ability of U.S. businesses to identify and evaluate market opportunities. A BE-120 survey is required of each U.S. person that had transactions, regardless of the amount of their transactions, with foreign persons in the covered services or intellectual property categories during its 2017 fiscal year. All reporters with cross-border transactions in the covered services and intellectual property categories must report regardless of whether or not they have been contacted by BEA. All reporters must complete pages 1 through 8, providing a total dollar amount for their sales and purchases, as applicable, by transaction type. Any U.S. person that did not have transactions in the covered services or intellectual property categories is required to complete the report through page 8 if notified by BEA about the survey. Any U.S. person whose combined sales to foreign persons of covered services and intellectual property exceeded $2 million for its 2017 fiscal year, and or whose combined purchases from foreign persons of covered services and intellectual property exceeded $1 million for its 2017 fiscal year, is required to provide data on total sales and or purchases of each of the covered types of services and intellectual property transactions, and must also disaggregate the totals by country and by relationship to the foreign transactor, whether a foreign affiliate, part of the foreign parent group, or unaffiliated, on the mandatory schedules of the survey, as applicable. The scope of the survey is limited to cross-border transactions and selected services and intellectual property between the consolidated domestic U.S. reporter and foreign persons. A full list of the types of services and intellectual property transactions covered by the survey can be found on pages 6 and 7 of the survey. Services are considered reportable whether they are performed remotely via telephone, internet, email, etc., or if they are performed in person by or for an individual temporarily traveling abroad. Respondents are required to report services transactions, sales and purchases, between their consolidated domestic U.S. operations and all foreign persons, regardless of affiliation, including intercompany transactions that may be eliminated in consolidation. Transactions a U.S. reporter has with a foreign person in which the U.S. reporter owns 10% or more of the foreign company's voting stock would be considered transactions with foreign affiliates. Transactions a U.S. reporter has with a foreign person that owns 10% or more of the U.S. reporter's voting stock would be considered transactions with a foreign parent. Transactions with a foreign affiliate of the foreign parent are transactions a U.S. reporter has with a foreign entity proceeding up the foreign parent's ownership chain that has more than 50% direct voting interest in the entity below it, up to and including that entity in which no other foreign entity has more than a 50% direct voting interest, and transactions with any foreign entity in which the foreign parent or any foreign affiliate of the foreign parent has more than a 50% direct voting interest. Such transactions with this category of affiliation would be considered transactions with the foreign parent group on the BE 120 survey. Transactions a U.S. reporter has with a foreign person who has no voting interest or less than a 10% voting relationship with the U.S. reporter or the foreign parent group would be considered transactions with unaffiliated foreign persons. For more information on reporting relationships, see page 12 of the survey. Do not report transactions between the U.S. reporter's foreign affiliates or foreign parent group and other foreign persons. These are considered foreign-to-foreign transactions. Only report transactions between your consolidated domestic U.S. operations and foreign persons. For more information about these distinctions, please see page 5 of the BE 120 report. Tables 1 and 2 on pages 6 and 7 of the BE 120 survey outline the types of transactions with foreign persons that are reportable on the survey. Table 1 lists covered intellectual property transactions, and Table 2 lists covered services transactions. As mentioned earlier, all respondents, regardless of the amount of their transactions in the covered services and intellectual property categories, are required to provide a total dollar amount for their sales and purchases as applicable by transaction type. In Table 1, U.S. reporters who had transactions with foreign persons and intellectual property must report according to what types of rights were conveyed with those transactions. Transactions in intellectual property typically fall into 3 categories: rights to use intellectual property, rights to reproduce and or distribute intellectual property, and the outright sale or purchase of intellectual property, including the conveyance of a right to use a property in perpetuity. For more information about these categories, please view the video titled BE 120 Category Changes at www.bea.gov/BE120. Respondents should report their total sales to foreign persons for each transaction type in column 3 of the table, and their total purchases from foreign persons for each transaction type in column 4. Amounts should be reported in thousands of US dollars. For example, 1,200,000 should be reported as 1200. Round amounts of less than $500 to 0. Table 2 lists the type of services transactions that are covered by the 2017 BE 120 survey. As with Table 1, respondents should report their total sales to foreign persons for each transaction type in column 3, and their total purchases from foreign persons for each transaction type in column 4. Amounts should be reported in thousands of US dollars. Round amounts of less than $500 to 0. After completing tables 1 and 2, proceed to page 8 of the survey. In question 6 on page 8 of the survey, enter the U.S. reporter's total sales to foreign persons as reported in tables 1 and 2. If total combined sales to foreign persons exceeded $2 million, then for each transaction type with sales greater than $500, you are required to report additional details on the country and affiliation to the foreign transactor on Schedules A and or C, and complete Schedule D of the survey as indicated in the table shown. If total combined sales to foreign persons did not exceed $2 million, you are requested, but not required, to report the additional details on the schedules. In question 7, enter the U.S. reporter's total purchases from foreign persons as reported in tables 1 and 2. If total combined purchases from foreign persons exceeded $1 million, then for each transaction type with purchases greater than $500, You are required to report additional details on the country and affiliation to the foreign transactor on Schedule B, and complete Schedule E of the survey as indicated in the table shown. If total combined purchases from foreign persons did not exceed $1 million, you are requested, but not required, to report the additional details on the schedules. If the U.S. reporter's total sales and total purchases from foreign persons did not exceed $2 million and $1 million, respectively, and you would like to report voluntarily, you may continue with question 8 of the survey and then complete Schedules A through E as appropriate. If the U.S. reporter's total sales and total purchases from foreign persons did not exceed $2 million and $1 million respectively, and you do not wish to provide additional details on the schedules, you may stop after answering no to question 7 and return the form according to the instructions on page 1 of the survey. Now we will look at an example of a survey respondent who had sales to foreign persons in excess of the BE 120's $2 million threshold for providing the additional details on the mandatory schedules. We will demonstrate how the respondent would report those sales on the survey. Consider a respondent that had $10 million in sales to foreign persons for the right to use a patent, process, or trade secret to produce and/or distribute a product or service. This transaction type is listed on Table 1 on page 6. The transaction code that corresponds to this transaction type, 1.1, is listed in column 1 of the table. The respondent would then enter 10000 in column 3 of the row corresponding with the transaction type, indicating sales of $10 million. This reporter did not have any other sales to foreign persons and any of the other types of intellectual property or selected services transactions listed in Table 1 and 2 of the survey. In question 6, the U.S. reporter would enter their total sales to foreign persons, $10 million, and answer yes to indicate that their total sales to foreign persons were greater than $2 million during their 2017 fiscal year. The accompanying table instructs them to report the additional mandatory country and affiliation details for transaction code 1.1 on Schedule A of the survey starting on page 13. Just as with reporting total sales in question 6, the U.S. reporter would enter their total purchases from foreign persons in the space provided for question 7. In this case, the reporter's purchases were 0, and they would answer no to indicate that their total purchases from foreign persons were $1 million or less during their 2017 fiscal year. Now let's look at how the respondent would report their sales on Schedule A of the survey. First, the respondent would enter the code from column 1 of Table 3 that corresponds with the type of transaction they're reporting. In this case, you may recall it is 1.1. Next, the respondent would enter the country of the purchaser or purchasers in column 1 of the schedule. In this case, let's say the respondent had sales to France and Japan. Columns 3, 4, and 5 of the schedule correspond with the U.S. reporter's relationship to the foreign purchaser. Foreign persons fall into 3 groups: foreign affiliates, column 3, the foreign parent group, column 4, and unaffiliated foreign persons, column 5. For more information about reporting relationships, see page 12 of the survey. For this example, let's say the U.S. reporter had sales of $7 million to its foreign affiliates in France and $3 million in sales to unaffiliated foreign persons in Japan. They would enter 7000 in column 3 of the row corresponding with France and 3000 in column 5 of the row corresponding with Japan. Please note that separate Schedule A in the case of sales, or separate Schedule B in the case of purchases, must be completed for each transaction type. If you need to report more than one transaction type, or need to report additional country detail than a Schedule A allows, please use the Overflow sheets provided at the end of the form, or make additional copies of the schedules as needed. e-file users can add additional schedules by selecting Add Overflow from the Survey Selection page. If you have any questions about completing the BE120 survey, you may contact us at 301-278-9303 or email us at be120help@bea.gov. For additional information on the BE120 survey, such as answers to frequently asked questions or blank survey forms, please go to www.bea.gov/BE120. To file using our e-file system, visit www.bea.gov/efile. This concludes our video on the reporting requirements, determining reporting status, and the mandatory schedules of the 2017 BE120.